This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live.
It's late, it's live, and it's loud from London. It's the Monday Late Show with your host, Toby Doncaster. And tonight, I talk to Piers Gladhill, maths teacher extraordinaire, about peer collaboration in the classroom and how to make peer teaching work.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live. Tune in live at ttradio.org, or to join in the conversation, download the Podbean app and search Teachers Talk Radio. Follow the hashtag TTRadio. Tune in, talk it out with Teachers Talk Radio.
Hello, peers. Welcome to the Late Show with me, Toby Doncaster. You are a maths teacher extraordinaire, and you've got so much to share about pair teaching. You know, how do you make it work in the classroom with other teachers?
Well, first, can you hear me? And secondly, I love the rhyming that you're doing there.
I can hear you just fine.
That's great. Okay. Do you know what? I've completely forgotten the question. How do I make it work? Is that it?
Yeah. I mean, do you know what? I mean, we work together. I've seen you with so many other teachers, TAs, you know, all sorts of people in the classroom, and you seem to be having such a great time. What's the magic? How do you make the magic work in your class?
Well, I think first you basically have an eye on what people are good at. So if TAs, for instance, you just get to know them and you get to know their strengths and weaknesses and that kind of thing, and then you don't give them something where they're going to bomb. You give them something to do that they can run with, and that's good. Also, when I start a maths class and I've got a new class for the very first time, I say there's no such thing as a stupid question. There's just questions you need to ask. And then I go, right, I've got a question. You're going to tell me whether it's a stupid question or not. And I say, is 1 + 1 2? And they'll go, yes, of course it is. And then now you go, is that a stupid question? And they say, yes, it's a stupid question. I said, but hang on a minute, there's no such thing as a stupid question. And you're wrong. It's a very intelligent question, because what is 1 centimeter + 1 meter? It's not 2 of anything. What is $1 + 1 pound? It's not 2 of anything. So there you go. We can learn from everybody's questions. So that then allows for an atmosphere of, okay, I can't ask a stupid question. I'm allowed to ask any question if it's something I need to know, as long as it's about maths, of course. And then that's the beginning, isn't it? Of opening things up and allowing people to be themselves and also show themselves in a way, because then you know, all right, I'm getting an idea of where they're at now because of the type of questions they're asking. And that goes with colleagues as well. So you take them as you find them, and then you work with them the way it's comfortable and the way things are and what their talents are, and that's I suppose, in the grand scheme of things, how it might work.
I suppose what you're saying really is that you are a very sort of open person. You bring about that sense of comfort, if you like, to people, especially when you think about maths anxiety and fear of showing themselves up, fear of failure, and so on. And it seems to work quite nicely in your classes.
And I think that's partly because I'm also open and honest about when I make a mistake. So I don't pretend to a class that I'm not making a mistake. Absolutely not. I allow them to correct me when I do make a mistake. I make no secret of the fact that I'm dyscalculic and dyslexic, and so nothing really surprises me, especially not in myself. But I also show them that these little learning difficulties are actually they will be overcome by them if they just push forward, and mistakes will be made on the way, and that's absolutely fine. Making mistakes is great because you learn from them. So there's their mistakes and are invited and to be used to work with. Indeed, we might actually put mistakes on the board and say, well, look, this is an answer that a student gave. What mistake did they make? How can we develop and get the right reasoning done, and then eventually the right answer? I seem to be rambling. I'm sure that's not what you wanted to know.
Not at all. No, actually, you've mentioned a good thing about, which is, okay, there is a mistake. Say that a student has made the mistake, and do they feel embarrassed that you've actually put that mistake up on the board?
Well, I wouldn't attach it to a particular student, and it might not even be a real student. So there's quite a few maths materials where you have, for instance, there's something called, obviously you mustn't use this material if you have got a student called Clive, but there's a set of material called Clumsy Clive, where we tend not to have anybody called Clive, but it is possible. And so that would be material I wouldn't use. I would basically get some Tipex, or basically use some text recognition thing, and then I would change the text from Clumsy Clive to Clumsy, I don't know, something else beginning with C.
Okay.
Or CL, in fact.
Yeah.
Clytemnestra, there you go.
There you go. But no, what we were trying to dive into is, how is it that you get teachers to collaborate? So I'm thinking more of like the teachers, the teaching assistants. Maybe you also have mentees coming into the lesson. So do you ever invite teaching assistants to sort of try to attempt a question? Like you said, you put the mistake on the board. Do you then invite them to partake, as it were?
Only if they want to. So if I've got the idea, because sometimes you might get a TA that gets so enthusiastic they start answering questions instead of letting the students. I don't think I've ever got a TA to come to the board and demonstrate something. Maybe I should. But in my experience, they tend to be quite reticent to come to the board and that sort of thing, and maybe sort of explain an answer, unless of course they're the other type that then puts their hand up when you really don't want them to, and then sort of butt in when the students should be answering, because it's after all these students that we're supposed to be helping. Generally speaking, TAs in our college are there to work with specific students to keep those students focused, or keep those students on track, or help along a bit identifying the stages to a maths problem. That's generally how I would use them. But as opposed to a mentee, I have a completely different approach. They're there because they want to learn to teach. And basically, I go, okay, so what do you want to do next week? What topic do you want to cover? And they then create the materials or find the materials to teach that topic. And I give them about an hour to do it. And they take over the lesson for that period of time. And if they need any assistance in using the board or board techniques, or I feel that an intervention is required because they might have the students looking perplexed, and maybe they haven't spotted a nice, easy, snappy way of explaining something, then I might intervene and say, how about this? And I'm also perfectly happy that when I'm demonstrating something, that the mentee goes, oh, what about this? So that's the point, isn't it? That it's a two-way thing, and I don't want to be in absolute control. I don't. So that goes with students, and so the students need to have a sense of control over the lesson. And if they've got something to say, they should go ahead and say it. Oh, sir, I didn't do it that way, blah, blah, blah. So,
Yeah,
oh, okay.
definitely.
How did you do it? Oh, I did this and this. And they go, oh, right. And how does that work? And so then I let the student demonstrate, or I do it for them on the board, whichever they're comfortable with. And then, yeah, I suppose that's a kind of collaboration too, isn't it? When you allow other
Definitely.
ideas to be expressed in the lesson. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that seems to be my issue, if you like, because, I teach GCSE English, and there's a whole range of different interpretations that you can make on a piece of text. And it's about, sort of bringing it all in tight and saying, well, who's got the most, shall I say, reasonable answer based on the evidence that they've got. I think is that the same in maths? Different in maths?
Well, I tell you what, I think it's a hell of a lot easier in maths, to be honest.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Because just as you said, there might be a multitude, sorry, of interpretations to a text, and how things are put. There's various different ways of putting things and expressing yourself, and I think, and it's quite bulky in terms of how you present the different ways, and that's tricky in English, I think. It's a hell of a lot easier in maths, because while there might be a few different ways you can approach something, they're very much quicker to communicate. And in a way, with maths, if you get the knack, the less you write, the clearer you're being. Because you could use a lot of words in your answers, and actually that generally just clouds things. You want to express it in simple mathematical terms. Algebra comes in quite handy, or I've just gone blank. Oh, bar modeling. That's quite a good way of representing ratios and also algebra. And it's a nifty way of expressing things. And numbers are quite quick to write anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What I was wondering though, if I was to collaborate with you in a classroom, do I need to be able to speak maths proficiently as a teacher? I mean, is it something I can learn on the job, as it were?
You mean if you were like a
A mentee, yeah.
a mentee? So if I was mentoring you, and I yeah, you learn on the job, absolutely, and that and I hope when I give feedback, I always say, I be aware of this, of the students, look at their faces,
Mm,
ask, or get a feel for who the weaker students are, because if the weaker students understand, then you've cracked it. So yeah, so you're talking about a math speak, is that it?
yeah, sure.
Well, actually, um okay, you can use, for instance, there are words so specific vocabulary. For instance, you could say whole number, or you could use integer.
Mm,
I would actually encourage both words to be used simultaneously, one after the other, so that the students, the idea of what an integer is reinforced. Um, and if that word is a focus of the lesson, then I would say, then you've got to devise some concept questions where integer is fully explained, so that they go, is 0.5 an integer? Yes, no.
mm,
Is a half an integer? Yes, no. Is a whole number exactly the same as an integer? Are ratios expressed in integers, or can they be expressed in some other way? Is 65.5% an integer? So or what you do is, if it's a specific vocabulary now, you could go, I'm thinking of a number, and then they have to then start using the vocabulary. So is it an
mm,
integer? Yes. All right. So they know it's not going to have a decimal point, or it's not going to be a fraction. Is it is it an odd number? And you go, no, it's not an odd number. Is it an even number? Yes, it's an even number. And blah, blah, blah. Anyway, and then eventually they might get that I'm thinking of the only prime number that is an even number. I
Sure.
mean, so that, yeah, there's but that's less to do with collaboration and more. Well, I suppose if I'm helping someone learn something, I suppose that's sort of collaboration.
Sure.
I've always considered myself to be a caring head teacher who acts sensitively to support staff mental health. But what I found increasingly difficult was managing the negative impact on staff mental health when resolving issues related to their employment or daily work. Heartfelt Leadership has been developed by Teachwell Toolkit as a handbook to support head teachers to overcome the challenges of school improvement while supporting staff well-being. We know that difficult conversations can quickly turn into conflict if procedures are not fully transparent, understood and followed. Our handbook takes you through step-by-step processes while maintaining mutual respect, avoiding conflict and finding solutions.
At Bloomsbury Education, we're passionate about supporting teachers with high-quality professional development books from leading experts. Whether you're navigating your first crucial years as an early career teacher or a more experienced teacher looking to refresh your practice or take a step up into leadership, our award-winning books are here to help. We publish practical books to support teaching across primary and secondary, from the very best in research-led practice to trusted advice on inclusivity, behaviour and curriculum design. Visit the Bloomsbury Education website at bloomsbury.com/education to find out more and use code BLOOMTTR24 to save 20% on all education titles. Bloomsbury Education, books for every step of your teaching journey.
To Piers Gledhill, maths teacher extraordinaire, and somebody who really encourages collaboration within the classroom. And I'm trying to sort of like tease out all the how to make the magic happen. So, Piers, when we talked about having a common language, what other challenges do teachers face when they sort of teach together in the classroom? So,
that's a good one, actually. Yes, because sometimes we do team teaching. I'm actually extremely fond of team teaching. In fact, my first job at our college was actually in a team teaching role. I was there team teaching functional skills level 1. I was specifically brought in to raise the percentage of students passing level 1. And it's definitely, you need trust. So you need to know that you work together, that you don't undermine each other, that when one person jumps in and says, oh, actually, how about this, that it's done in a sensitive and collaborative way, and it doesn't undermine the other person. So that's especially important if you are visiting another class and it's not your class. So you don't want to upset the other teacher, and you don't want to sort of
step on their toes, really,
on their toes, and you don't want to upset the balance of the class. You don't, because you might not be there all the time. So when you leave, you want to leave it in the hands of that teacher, and you don't want to sort of disrupt their relationship with the student's relationship with their normal teacher. So that's important. So yes, trust. What we're very lucky with at our college actually is that the maths department is very much open to collaboration and that kind of thing, especially at Southall. And I think it works really, really well. I think, do you know what? I think also it helps if you have relationships outside the school, the college or school to some extent as well. Now that might still take place in the college but outside the classroom. But socially, if you know each other, then you get to talk to each other. Or if you meet during CPD days and that sort of thing, and you chat and blah blah blah, you get to know each other, and you get, that's also a way of building trust, especially when you're also working on a project when it's non-class time, and you work towards a common goal. Maybe there's some material you're trying to develop, or a new method or a new approach that you're developing together. That creates a sense of trust and also excitement about working together. But you do need to tread carefully.
I like that. So tread carefully, and there's a sense of trust, building trust with each other and working together to produce materials. And do you, when you go in with a pair, with a sort of a peer to teach together, do you assign roles to each other, sort of thing, or do you just say, look, let's just freewheel it and run with it?
I must admit, well, I tend to just run with it, and so do the people I work with. However, that doesn't suit everybody, and I think it's a very good, more organized approach to be more, to establish how it might work out. I think that's a very good approach, actually. We never do it with my colleagues. We never do that. We just go, yeah, what the hell, let's just see, because we have an easy relationship, and we're perfectly happy for the other teachers to tell us to shut up and they want to do something. And that's quite fun for the students. So if you're not too precious and that's the relationship you have, then that works. However, that absolutely isn't a blueprint for success for a lot of people. And I think your suggestion, Toby, of having some ground rules or organizing how the lesson might develop, and the different points when an intervention from one or the other is required, and how the lesson will run, and what role each person has at any stage in the lesson. I think that's quite a good thing to do, actually. It requires more work, but on the other hand, if you do it the other way, you've got to work on the relationship, and you've got to be very trusting, and that might not work for the two people that are a team teaching. So I think an organized approach is good for both staff and students as well. I think that's a good point.
I mean, you were talking about it's either a lot of hard work or it's a lot of hard work.
And it depends, and that's, again, it's about personality traits, isn't it? It's where you are in terms of your social interaction, and how much you can, how much you're prepared to be embarrassed if something goes wrong, or I, as you probably gathered, I don't get too embarrassed. But it's all part of the thing that you don't want your students to be embarrassed when they make a mistake. So kind of I like this open thing, and obviously you have to pick up on things. So you have to be intuitive, and if your skill set is not so intuitive, then you have to be more organized. It's as simple as that.
You know what? I think we've boiled it down. So how would you sort of, maybe after the lesson, with your mentees and other people that you work with, do you feedback? How do you feedback?
Yes. So I have a terribly short memory. So we used to have a manager that when she did observations, she basically wrote down everything that happened, and that is my style very much as well. So I basically write down everything that happened. I start the clock and write down everything that happened. Blah blah blah.
Oh yeah.
And I notice things, and and then I've written a great big long text, and then I will go through what happened, blow by blow, and then and I allow myself to be interrupted, or interrupt myself and ask questions. What do you think happened then? How could we improve that? And or that went really, really well. Definitely keep that, and blah, blah, blah. So yeah, basically, as I said, I've got a very short memory, so I like to do things
Okay.
immediately.
Yeah.
And but since I've written it all down as it happened, I then have a record of it, and so I can then look at it again. And if it's not possible to give feedback immediately, then at least I have that a record of the blow by blow, and then I might analyze it in terms of a feedback form or something like that, and then write it up. But I like to give my feedback immediately because I'm very much a person that lives in the moment, and I'm on to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And which reminds me, I do need to write up a report for Monica.
Okay. So you've just had somebody in the classroom.
Well, yeah, about 2 weeks ago. So she got the
Oh
feedback
my goodness.
immediately, but I haven't written up the report yet. And I definitely know she sent me the form that I need to fill in, so I need to do that. So yes, I have my failings. I can tell you that much.
I just wanted to say there's quite an audience of people interested in what we're talking about, and I'm opening up an invitation to anybody, anyone in the audience. If you've got any questions for myself or peers about peer collaboration and how to make it work in the classroom, please drop us a message. Send us a message, and we will read it out, and Piers and I will put our heads together and try to answer it.
Sounds good.
Yes. I wanted to ask you, it sounds like you've done all the hard work, if you like, to make it, to make peer collaboration work in the classroom. How do you think, the college could better serve you, in order to make this an easier job, if you like, to make it, worthwhile for other people to join you, and for things to happen, more productive things to happen in the classroom?
Well, I suppose one of the barriers to working together is the fact that the timetables often don't allow us to be in each other's classrooms, because we're teaching at the same time a completely different class, and those classes may be too big to combine. However, actually, I happen to have a room that has a partition wall, and that wall is sometimes opened up, especially for exams and things, but it could be opened up where we combine a class and collaborate. So there's nothing the college needs to do in that case. It just needs to be me and the teacher then just go, yeah, do you know what, we'll teach our classes together, and we'll open up barrier. And that does in fact happen. So that doesn't have to happen. However, sometimes I am free. So I teach 13 and a half hours on Monday, Tuesday. So Wednesday is a lighter day. Thursday is a very much lighter day. And then Friday is a heavy day again. So on Thursdays, I sometimes do just wander into a colleague of mine, and we team teach because I happen to be available, and that's how it works. You asked what could the college do? Well, that my situation is quite unusual in that I have quite a light midweek, and that allows me to go to other classrooms. However, if you want, if staff wanted to team teach with each other, or then it would have to be somehow be possible to book a room where more than one class can take place, so that the two teachers can teach this larger group together for some kind of project. So I mean that would have to be a flexibility in booking or timing of lessons, I think. But again, I mean, yes, I suppose booking rooms. I mean, I at our college, apparently we've got to book the room at least 5 days in advance. As
That's
you've
right.
probably gathered from me, I don't have that kind of organizational skill. I just think of things in the moment and to go, do you know what? I want that room. And then I tell them, and then I just take it. God, is this being broadcast? Oops. Well,
I was
I
also
make sure that
thinking,
room is free, and then say that I'm taking it, and then if they don't get around to booking it, well, I've got it anyway.
yeah.
But
I was thinking, though, following the line of trust, I think institutions could encourage people to peer observe to start with,
that's a
and
superb idea.
you know,
Absolutely.
and to have a sort of you know, a tick sheet of praise, if you like.
Oh,
What
that's
did you like?
lovely. I like that very much.
You
The,
know,
the the problem with our college though is again it's timetabling. Who's taking my class if I'm peer observing someone else? Most people have a timetable which is more 2 to 3 lessons every day for 5 days, and then there's no gaps really. So it has to be, if they want peer observation, which I think is a very good way to develop new ideas and to see new things happening, then there has to be some way of freeing up that teacher so they then can teach. Maybe I don't know, maybe a manager could teach that class, and then that person then goes off.
exactly.
And actually there's an advantage for the manager in this, because the managers are supposed to do some teaching. So why don't they, instead of having a fixed timetable, teach every class in their management group, at least once, so that then that teacher can then observe someone else.
Exactly.
I think we just come up with something. There we go.
Paul has just sent in a message. He says, when I started primary in 2008, our school used to work in groups and plan lessons for the creative curriculum. Over the years, the need and want for collaboration has greatly diminished because of time, brought-in schemes of work, and the increase in observations from SLT. It's a shame because some of the lessons we came up with were legendary. And I think that's the whole point. 2 heads are always going to be better than 1. 5 heads, they could come up with things that are quite exciting, quite innovative, and saves us inventing the wheel. But I would love to see, classes where 2 or even 3 teachers were working together to divvy up the students, give each person a different flavor. What I've experienced, which is quite interesting, is when I cover other classes and I start teaching something and they say, oh, our teacher didn't teach it that way, taught it in another way. And I'm like, well, it'd be great if we were doing this together and, we could hear what the other person has to say, because we're probably singing from the same hymn sheet, but maybe using a different language. I don't know. That's my rant over.
Well, Paula, I think that's a real shame, isn't it? And yes, that does seem to happen, that there seems to be less time for collaboration. There's more scrutiny, and yet somehow that scrutiny doesn't result in better results or better outcomes. It's a tragedy. I think well-managed schools, though, with innovative heads, will probably want to further collaboration and will be open to ideas. It's I mean, one wonders whether there'll be changes to Ofsted, and then that will then have a positive knockdown effect
Exactly.
on how head teachers organise things and think about things. I hope so. Yeah. I mean, but of course, if you're if you want to be in a room where there's more than one teacher, then you need a bigger classroom because you're having to put the classes together as well.
That's right. Yeah.
I mean, you then have to both have the confidence to be able to manage that number of students, that number of children. And it might be that then the students become off topic or off task because of the this is fun, look at all these people, and there's that girl, and I mean, it's it needs to be very managed and thought through if you've not done this before.
I've always considered myself to be a caring head teacher who acts sensitively to support staff mental health. But what I found increasingly difficult was managing the negative impact on staff mental health when resolving issues related to their employment or daily work. Heartfelt Leadership has been developed by Teachwell Toolkit as a handbook to support head teachers to overcome the challenges of school improvement while supporting staff well-being. We know that difficult conversations can quickly turn into conflict if procedures are not fully transparent, understood and followed. Our handbook takes you through step-by-step processes while maintaining mutual respect, avoiding conflict and finding solutions.
At Bloomsbury Education, we're passionate about supporting teachers with high-quality professional development books from leading experts. Whether you're navigating your first crucial years as an early career teacher or a more experienced teacher looking to refresh your practice or take a step up into leadership, our award-winning books are here to help. We publish practical books to support teaching across primary and secondary, from the very best in research-led practice to trusted advice on inclusivity, behaviour and curriculum design. Visit the Bloomsbury Education website at bloomsbury.com/education to find out more and use code BLOOMTTR24 to save 20% on all education titles. Bloomsbury Education, books for every step of your teaching journey.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and this is Teachers Talk Radio News.
BBC News reports that MI5 has briefed Vice-Chancellors from 24 universities across the UK on the threat from foreign states which could undermine national security. The Vice-Chancellors were warned that cutting-edge research could be targeted by states seeking to boost their own militaries and economies. The Deputy Prime Minister has also announced a consultation on measures to protect UK universities. There has been no direct reference to any one state, but the government has previously warned that China could be gaining influence in British academic research. The institutions involved in the briefing included Oxford, Cambridge and Imperial College London. The head of the Russell Group said its members take their national security responsibilities incredibly seriously. The Chief Executive of Universities UK said the body has worked with government for several years. The latest particular threat could be to academic research that has a potential dual use in civilian and military life. The Guardian features the topic of Ofsted one-word judgments as it appears in the news once again. Reaction to the news features prominently in the article, with primary focus given to the views of Professor Julia Waters, sister of Ruth Perry. Ms Perry's death following an Ofsted inspection prompted a review of a range of aspects of the inspection process, with one-word judgments a main focus of interest. In a statement published on the 25th of April, the government has ruled that the judgments are here to stay. Professor Waters described the government's response to an inquiry by the Commons Education Committee as woefully inadequate. Teaching unions had backed calls for the scrapping of the single word judgments and of more radical reform to the inspectorate in England. The announcement came as something of a shock, as days earlier the Sunday Times had published a story suggesting the single word judgment would likely be scrapped. Government have stated that the headline grades provide a succinct and accessible summary for parents, and that they enable government to look at inspection outcomes across England. The statement went on to say they would continue to listen as part of the Big Listen public consultation, although many have criticised the wording of some of the questions, which appear to prevent clear, critical feedback. It seems that funding for education isn't just a hot topic for the UK. The BBC Latin American news site reports on protests in Buenos Aires as thousands of people took to the streets to demand increased funding for public universities. Argentina's president came to office in 2023 and vowed to take a chainsaw to public spending and justified the cuts by calling the state-run universities centres of socialist indoctrination. Ricardo Gelpi, rector of University of Buenos Aires, says the institution may have to close within 3 months without more funding. Pictures from the demonstration show tens of thousands of protesters dancing, playing instruments and holding banners. The BBC also report on a World Health Organization report which shows that a third of 11-year-olds and more than half of 13-year-olds in England have drunk alcohol. Girls were found to be more likely than boys to be drinking and getting drunk aged 15 in England, Wales and Scotland. The World Health Organization called on countries to introduce more measures to protect children. The report looked at data from 4,500 school-aged children from each country in Europe, Central Asia and Canada between 2021 and 22. The focus was on use of cigarettes, vaping, alcohol and cannabis among adolescents. The UK has always had relatively high alcohol use amongst young people, but it has been declining. On cannabis use, the report found more boys in Scotland had used the drug compared to all other countries. No data was provided for England. Smoking is much less common, but the report confirmed that vaping rates have overtaken it in most countries and are above average in the UK. Full details of the report can be found on the BBC website. Finally, Cambridge University's Fitzwilliam College has apologised to students after housekeeping staff allegedly embarrassed one individual by posting images of their messy room. Pictures of the communal areas and a bedroom were emailed around the college as an illustration of what housekeeping staff don't want to see. But the college has since apologised, saying the inclusion of the image of a bedroom was unacceptable and an invasion of privacy. Students had also complained that they were being woken up and asked to tidy communal areas too early, although the college says it has stopped this practice in response to feedback. This has been your Teachers Talk Radio News with Joe Fox.
And we're back.
Hello.
Hello, Piers. We left on the dreaded O word. Yes.
Oh yes, Ofsted, indeed.
Oh my goodness! You just said it.
I know. I'm a rude man. And it was in the news there, wasn't it? It was referred to there. Yeah, and I was thinking actually. Paula mentioned that she was a primary school teacher, and Toby, I don't know whether you know this or not, but I first trained as a primary school teacher.
Right.
And yeah, so that was how I trained initially. My degree was in John Tonner's degree in German and ancient history, and why I'm a maths teacher now, I have no idea whatsoever. It just one of those things. It just came about. Took me by surprise. But yeah, I used to be a primary school teacher, and I think whether you're a primary school teacher or whatever it is that you teach in secondary or FE, I think one of the things that can easily happen is that you are alone with your class or classes, and you can actually feel quite isolated.
That's right.
And I think so. Institutions in which we work would do well to allow for collaboration, allow for people to work with one another, and end this isolation. However, I'm sure we all know colleagues that love their isolation and absolutely don't want to change anything they do, and don't want anyone in their class. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I
But
know, but I was just
I do
wondering,
wonder
does this,
whether that is actually entirely healthy.
but I was just going to say, does this boil back down to trust again? Trust and having safe spaces.
Absolutely. Of course it does. And I think,
Mm,
it's definitely for managers to develop a sense of trust. So going back to a question you asked, how can an education institution help colleagues develop collaboration? And I think it's creating a culture of trust, because I think that is a wider issue.
mm,
I think that is definitely something that that the institution, as an institution, needs to work on. So, for instance, not having a blame culture. So, if you have a quality team, that it's not punitive. It's a punitive regime, but it's actually a developmental one, and the sense of development and working together, and valuing colleagues and ideas, and developing what you have, rather than saying, right, if you don't achieve blah 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 blah, then you're out. Though a collaborative approach uh, can be demonstrated by a senior management and your quality team. Definitely.
exactly. Yeah. I mean, I was just thinking, you know, I this idea of being in isolation, it's quite a lonely one, and it can be very demotivating, actually, especially if you have difficult students. Well, I remember, I mean, English teaching again, um, I could count the number of students who love English on one hand, I'm sure, and
I think I need one finger.
do you know what I mean? So, but
For
what
maths.
what I had what I had was the vocational courses, that the vocational teachers started coming into my room just to say hi, and it was like they come in, they say hi, how's it going? Oh yes, English is very important, because you're going to need it
Absolutely,
to
yeah.
communicate. You communicate with customers. You're going to need to be able to read quite difficult manuals and so on. So keep up the great work, and then just walk out again, and
Yeah,
the
that's great,
atmosphere
isn't it? That's a
changed.
perfect example of collaboration. And I went down to the construction department, and I was speaking to Quarky. I wouldn't embarrass him now, but I said, so how would you teach English then? And he would go, oh right, and then he came up with a fantastic idea of, suddenly it wasn't maths, because I would have loved that, but anyway, he came up with a fantastic idea of a scenario where it was immediately understandable, and then he showed how you could build on that idea, and then get into the wider idea of literature, and that sort of thing. I've forgotten all the details now, but I mentioned it at some point. But as I say, I've got a terrible memory. But I think our construction teachers are a, an absolutely unused resource, or an underused
Yes,
resource, in
I
terms
couldn't
of
agree more.
developing maths and English. I think they have a wealth of ideas, if only we would ask them. So there's an example of isolation. So the maths department is isolated within its own sort of uh, ideas, and the English department, and if I think we need to collaborate with our vocational tutors, because they have some stonking ideas. Um,
Couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. Just to give context to our listeners, we work in a further education college. So, working with 16 to 19-year-olds, many of whom have suffered, greatly with their English and math results. And I would say don't really feel confident about approaching math and English yet again. And yet, I think, as we have just pointed out, collaborating with the vocational side of things does help. Um, Working together as teachers does help. I was just wondering though, teachers do have different working styles, teaching styles, how they get things across to students. How do you think we could harmonize these approaches to benefit the students themselves?
Well, that's a really good question, and I wonder, could we come in? Could we sort of sometimes change our timetables a bit so that we deliver subject specific, as in vocational subject specific mathematical item
Yeah,
in their theory classes, for instance, uh, or could we get the students to demonstrate uh, their practical use of maths or English in their sort of vocational context? I think we need to do so much more of this. I think it would be exciting for the students and a real eye opener for staff, because you're contextualizing then maths and English in a meaningful way that the students understand, and then they think, and obviously the students are realistic. They don't require every. They know that there's going to be loads of questions in the GCSE exams that have absolutely nothing to do with their vocational area. However, if we can get them to see where English and maths is of enormous importance within the vocational context, then there's buy-in, and it'd be great for everybody, really.
I was just thinking, of a scenario, of a likely scenario. So, dealing with customer complaints, for example. I'm sure the vocational areas have things like dealing with customer complaints, or, in maths, for example, measuring things out, trying to do first fixings for plumbing and
Mm.
carpentry and so on. We could be called in as so-called observer stroke experts to help out.
Yeah, and and vice versa, because they the construction lecturers often have real insights into what will grab the students' attention,
Yes.
because they the construction lecturers themselves uh, might have come to maths and English later anyway, in after they'd mastered the maths and English specifically required for the vocational subject. So they were successful in their sphere, but
Exactly.
might themselves not have been necessarily model students at school, but then found great joy in the vocational sphere that they operate in, and then came into education and then wanted to share with students their whole experience, and yet they're limited to the extent which they can do that because they're not English teachers and they're not maths teachers, and they have their own curriculum to deliver. But I think we could learn so much from them.
Piers, I think you and I have come up with an idea, which is, not just pair teaching in terms of two English teachers in the classroom or two maths teachers, but an English teacher and somebody else. In secondary
Absolutely,
schools, it could be a geography teacher and an English teacher, or you know,
absolutely,
why
absolutely.
not?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm sure. Oh, I mean, I'd love to act up in a history lesson, for example, and I don't know, maybe comment. I don't
do you
know.
mean act up or do you mean act?
Act either or, both work really. Um, but yeah, no, I could see how it worked. This is it. Working in isolation doesn't really work. We need to
No,
break the barriers, so to speak,
absolutely, absolutely.
and reach out. So back to you then. can you share, like a significant sort of success story where pair teaching with another maths teacher or with a TA or whatever has actually had a significant impact on students? Let's bring it back to the
Well, okay,
learners.
so actually, let's go back to I think I explained that when my first job at our college was as a team teacher, uh, and that so it was an experiment. It was seeing whether team teaching would actually deliver a huge increase in the success rates at level 1 on functional skills
Yeah.
in the health and social care department. Where students were studying health and social care. It was a massive increase, and so we completely smashed the 75% achievement target. How was that achieved? It wasn't just the two teachers, though. There was also a student mentor who would manage behavior. So it was, admittedly, it was in a time when there was a bit more money. So we've got two maths teachers and we've got a student mentor who, when a student started kicking up, would be taken outside. They'd have a conversation. It was not a confrontational conversation. It was, oh, I think you and I need to have a quick chat and what's going on, blah blah blah, how are you feeling, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
And then they would come back and then they'd settle down and then work with another student and da da da. So it meant that everybody was getting the type of attention that they needed. And now that was an example of it working wonderfully. Now, with the tight money situation, that now seems all like a dream. But I think teachers collaborating in our context, so vocational teachers, English teachers, maths teachers, we could make our lessons more accessible, more relevant, and that can only improve the learner experience, really.
Definitely. So, really, what we need to do as a matter of urgency is open up the classrooms to other teachers and say, come on, let's see what we can produce working together. I was just thinking my success story actually with peer collaboration was a little bit different in that what happened is that we started sharing materials. So, I would produce something, and actually, because of the the magic of the cloud, I would put it into a cloud folder and say, "Look, guys, here is a lesson plan that I've developed. Use it as you will. Adapt it, change it, modify it. Let me know about it." And I think that really helps things along as well.
Yeah, I mean, I remember the bad old days actually when at our institution, which we won't name, but things are considerably better now. Was that people? So people were teaching in isolation and would hold on to their materials and not share. And I'm sure there are institutions still like that, but thank God, the maths department at our college is absolutely the opposite of that now. So we were constantly sharing materials, and that's absolutely wonderful. And when we have CPD sessions, we're sharing materials and sharing ideas. It is so less isolating. But I do remember in the bad old days when you were just there with your students, you didn't share materials. There was this weird protectionism of materials, very odd, unless you got on with people fairly well and you happened to be friends and blah blah blah, then you'd share maybe. It was weird, but I think there are lots of institutions still like that.
Piers, I think it boils back down to trust.
Absolutely.
Trust that person's not going to laugh at you, not going to make, not going to judge you for the material.
Or exploit somehow the exchange is not a fair one. I mean, people used to be incredibly childish about that kind of thing, and I'm so glad that's so different now. Yeah.
Anyway, Piers, we've come to the end of our hour. Thank you so much for joining me. You've
Wow, it
given me
whizzed by, and I hardly said once.
Thank you so much. All right, see you when I see you. See you on the other side.
Thank you very much. Yeah, looking forward to it. All right, then. Look after yourself, Toby. Thanks. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
You've been listening to Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live and listen back at ttradio.org. We look forward to hearing from you next time on Teachers Talk Radio.